Good morning, good afternoon. Wow. See what happens when you take a nap in the middle of the day? Sorry, let me move the microphone a little closer to me. See what happens when you take a nap in the middle of the day? You just get all discombobulated with time and place and all that stuff. All that good stuff. This is Jim, the Keys bartender, coming to you from Key Largo while we're being approached by Tropical Storm Fred. Fred. Some names can inspire fear and stuff like that. Fred doesn't, but it's kind of, right currently it's skirting the northern part of Cuba and heading towards the Keys. So we're at the current speed, about 10 hours away. A little after midnight, maybe 2 a.m. It's going to be heading up the coast, probably strengthening to a tropical storm. I think it's a depression now. But we're going to get a lot of rain. And that means this weekend, generally what happens when there's a storm like this, we don't get, there's people that come down here and they continue with their plans. And there's people a lot of people cancel. The people have options that were driving down here, like we're going to lose our weekend crowd because they won't be able to go out on the water. Who's going to go out on the water when there's a tropical storm coming in? But it'll be sort of like that. Not too bad at all. But it will be bad for these outdoor venues. You get a lot of wind and rain. People just aren't keen to that. It's really not fun to go and dine in that stuff. So, as a bartender at an inside venue, the Catch Restaurant at mile marker 102 in Key Largo, it's a boon for us. We normally have a decent weekend. I won't say it'd be a great weekend, but we'll get the locals that don't go out on the water, don't go fishing, don't do things outside. We'll get people that are in the hotels across the street, and they'll come and hang out. Because it's a fun place. We're a restaurant and a pub. We can hang out and drink. And I'm a non-drinking guy, but, I do serve drinks. Should be fun. We should have a decent weekend. I'm looking forward to it. We're getting, we have a couple new employees come in. That'll be fun. Thickening up the employee pool at the Catch Restaurant. We have my coworker Molly, one of the owner's daughter. We've been working. She'll be going back to college in a week, and she will be missed. It's fun working with her. Molly was my bud, so it's going to be an adjustment. We're going to get some new people in there. Schedule's changing around a little. Going into season, going into, hopefully, it's the peak season for hurricanes. It's the peak. That's just the way it is. And we're going to be keeping one eye out for them. And this is our first real go at it, Fred. And then we'll probably have a couple other close calls looking for it. This one, if it was an intense hurricane, we would probably be eyeing our exit. We would have been gone already. 10 hours. We would have been on the road. As not to be caught in unawares. It's moving at a good clip around 20 miles per hour. So it's 270 miles away. So that's, 250 miles away, which is about a good 12 hours. Travel time if it doesn't slow down or speed up. 20 miles per hour moving is pretty fast for a storm system. But that's enough about that. I wonder what kind of drinks that people are going to be drinking this weekend. A lot of beer. A lot of maybe a hurricane or two. Margaritas. Things like that. I saw a map of the United States where they showed the most popular drink by state. And I think pina colada was Florida. You think it would be more of a rum drink down here. But they are rum drinks, but they're all spread out. They probably picked the most popular one in itself. So they got margarita, pina colada, Long Island iced tea, which a lot of my fellow bartenders call a garbage drink for garbage people. They really take it personally when some people order a Long Island iced tea. And some people really judge people by the drinks that they order. It's kind of funny, right? I used to drink a gimlet so often, or bourbon straight and neat. And you could tell when someone drinks the kind of bourbon I did at the frequency they did neat. Actually, years ago, I drink it on the rocks. But I also have a beer with me. A beer and a bourbon. I should have known that was a problem then. But that's neither here nor there now, since that's in my rearview mirror, drinking. I live in the Florida Keys, though. 33037. How many people really don't appreciate where they live in? They kind of remind themselves. They say we live in paradise. We live in paradise. We have to be. Well, I mean, we do live. It's pretty nice. It's pretty nice down here. It's gorgeous, but there's a lot of other nice places in the world, in the United States proper, and in the world in general. Gorgeous places. There's mountains, there's beaches, there's rivers, there's deserts, high deserts, all wonderful cities, beautiful cities, landscapes, wonderful places to live. And human nature as it is, and I'm eventually going to segue it into my daughter starting her time in high school. Human nature, the way it is, it just seems that you really don't appreciate. I'm going to start off with the place you live. No one, if there are some bad places in the world. There are some bad places, like Afghanistan's a bad place right now. Sudan, I imagine Sudan's pretty. Ethiopia, they're in the middle of a civil war there. Eritrea, Somalia. I'm picking them. Some Southeast Asia. Greece right now with all the wildfires it's having. Some horrible places to live at the moment. As a matter of fact, this could be a horrible place where I live in. My zip code, 33037 for the Upper Keys, Key Largo in particular, could be a horrible place to live when a hurricane's coming through. It's horrible. I mean, a lot of people have been through it, but there's nothing like it's like a train going over your head for however long it goes, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. It's just incredible. I mean, depending on the shelter you're in. And I went through here, I guess, a tropical storm / hurricane last year with the family because it wasn't quite up to speed. It was just right at that bottom part of the Category 1, which with the storm shutters is fine. I can get through that, stuff like that. And also there's tornadoes that put them off. But at that time, it is one of the worst places to live. Now, there's places that are always that way, going through civil war, drought, and things like that, forest fire, parts of California when there's wildfires going on. It's just horrible. But human nature as it is, you don't really notice when you live in a place. You get kind of numb, acculturated. I guess it's called acculturalization or normalization of the things around you. Like when I was visiting Zakopane, you go and see people not looking up at the mountains and not appreciating the view, not appreciating the clean surroundings and all that stuff and the fresh air. But, they're just working and they got that mundane look about them. And I guess you get that down in the Keys, as you would in a place like Warsaw, New York, Honolulu. You just don't appreciate the place you live. And a lot of times when your life's boring, you start thinking, well, I'd like to move someplace. And you think because you had a good time vacationing someplace, that's the place for you to be. I, on the other hand, I don't dissuade people from moving, but location changes usually don't work. A location change, you got to get a mindset. You have to have a mindset change first. That's the thing that's going to really help you. But a location change, you're going to be happy. You're going to be happy for a little while, and then you're going to realize, wait a second, I still have my own attitude, and I still have my same husband, and I still have the same type of job I have, and I got my thoughts. And that's the thing where if you can change your mind, you can start thinking about how beautiful it is where you are. I mean, there's people that, I come from Philadelphia, and there's people saying, are you glad to get out of there? Are you glad to get out of that place? Like it was a shithole? It's not a shithole. Sure, it's a big city, just like Miami is. Some people love Miami. There's some bad places in Miami. There's some bad places, very depressed areas, poor areas where there's high crime rates. Same as in Philadelphia. But there's also beautiful places with a lot of places to go, see, things to do, food to eat. So we really don't appreciate. It's you could live in Asheville, North Carolina, Honolulu, Hawaii, Nova Scotia, Paris, Zakopane, Berlin. Let's pick a couple other. Buenos Aires, Machu Picchu. I mean, you could change it. If you're unhappy there, what makes you think you'd be unhappy someplace? Now, sometimes you got to get away from your unhappiness. Like the people in Central America that are in Guatemala or Honduras, where you have, gangs running the country and things like that. So you want to maybe get your family out of there. Understandable. That is directly attributable to that. But most places in the United States are decent places to live. And all you need to do to really appreciate it is to change your outlook. I believe. That's the way I think it. And there's always something else you may think is better. There's better scenery, better restaurants, better roads, better nightlife, better shopping. It's just, there's all different aspects. Like if you are a shopaholic, it may suck to be a person that likes to go and touch things. It may suck to live in rural Idaho. No place to go. You may need that sensory thing. How would you know if you live there? But it struck me when this past Wednesday, when we went to the open house of my daughter's school for orientation. They do a walkthrough of the classes. They give you a schedule to show you where your class is. If you have a locker, where your locker is, where you get your bus and all that stuff, and where the cafeteria is. So, the first day you go, you're not running around like the proverbial chicken with its head cut off, or the person with their head up their ass. I guess that's the best way to say it. But I thought the school was magnificent. It was a magnificent school. Now, I didn't say perfect, but it was a magnificent school. You got to picture this. And maybe I could post some pictures. But it's Coral Shores High School in Tavernier, Florida. It serves the Upper Keys. Everything from Upper Matacumbe Bay or Lower Matacumbe Bay to Ocean Reef. It covers, almost 50 miles of the Keys. About 20-something miles south and 25, 30 miles north. So it's a lot of ground because we're long and skinny. But I'll tell you go there. It's what is it? A class? They got maybe 2,000 kids. Maybe 2,000 kids. Maybe not. Maybe 2,000 kids there. I may be going a little too big. It could be 1,600 kids. But whatever. So it's like on the outside when you look at it, it looks like a high school. You got the facade on the front. You got the a high school thing, and you can't tell until you go inside that it's an open plan for the hallways. And they have a courtyard where the hallways are open to, and a big courtyard with a couple trees, benches, and picnic tables for people to sit in and to mingle. And it's just, I wouldn't call it idyllic, but it is close to that. I went there and I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the big monitors they use for, instead of chalkboards nowadays, if you haven't been in the classroom in a while, a lot of these teachers just, they hook up, they do the lesson plans, which is, Christ, I would have thought of becoming one of the things that I did not want to be a history teacher was because I couldn't do the chalkboard or, world cultures or geography or something like that. I couldn't write on a chalkboard. I'm left-handed. I always kind of, smear the chalk or something like that. You got shitty handwriting from being left-handed, and, I'm tall enough. I can use the whole board, no problem. But then again, wait a second. I'd have a problem with the lower part. I always had a problem with the lower part of the board, but I was good with the high. But the handwriting just sucks. But with the computer, you just type this stuff in. You bring up your notes. You pop them in. They come up when you need them. You can leave them as long as you like. You can go back to it. You can hand out. You can print it out. You can send the notes to someone if you want. I mean, I was an avid note taker in school. And I did well. I did well in those classes because I always kind of was good at zoning in on important information. But the technology they have, the way they lay out the classes, because of the technology, I think that's part of it. It's just, and when I went to high school, it was close to 40 students per class. I think here they do more like 20, 25. And it's just, I'm looking at it, it seemed like a really great place to go to school. In the back, they got this beautiful athletic field, like a lot of places, but abutting the field, right next to the field, it overlooks the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, that's shit like you see on the Pacific. But if you look like right over at one side of the field, there's the Atlantic Ocean. Now, if you remember me telling you this stuff, there's virtually no natural beaches in the Keys. So that's one of the things they don't have. You can't run to the beach for the day if you want to ditch school, but you're pretty much there. Like in California, make a big thing. Oh, beach day, we're going to leave early and go to the beach. Well, you're going to school at the beach, practically. All you have to do is walk over, lean over the fence, and then there's the Atlantic Ocean. So, I remember when I went to Catholic boys' school in Philadelphia. It was 2,000 boys, 2,000 girls, separated in the middle by one of the accordion metal fences in the hallway. They came separated like we're crazy rabbits that were going to go over there and, get all the girls in trouble, which they got in trouble anyway a lot of times. Catholic schools usually had a very high rate of teen pregnancies because the one thing, they taught a lot at Catholic school. They taught a lot. They didn't teach anything about birth control, though. And not much about reproduction, human reproduction health. Yep, it's really important. It's a shame. I don't recall one time getting any information that was pertinent to how people got pregnant and all that stuff. You kind of knew. You knew if you're smart. You usually knew by the time you were like 11 years old, 10 years old, how that happened. Not the particulars, maybe, but you kind of knew what did what and how it happened. But I didn't want to get there. I want to get to my school. My school was it was a nice high school. It was clean. More of a traditional high school. It was built in 1970, but it was built in 1970 69, 70 in Philadelphia as a Catholic school. Now, I went to another school that was built in the 1970s in Maryland. It was a middle school, 2 middle schools and 1 high school put together. And they used very avant-garde architectural design concepts. They were just open floor plans for the rooms. They had big artificial walls. They had big movable walls between classes. None of the classes had more than 20 kids. I think they could have been 15 kids. I remember the class size was so small. This was in Maryland, so I guess it was one of those concept schools. It was called Old Mill Middle North. There was an Old Mill Middle South. And that was the middle school. And then it had Old Mill High School. And I guess they put them all in there. And we all shared one auditorium. Though I never saw anybody from one of the other schools. I don't recall. I was only there for maybe a half a year, if that. But I don't recall ever seeing it. It was a nice school. They had a really great cafeteria, a carpeted floor in a cafeteria, which is really unusual, round tables. And I think they had at most kids, they may have had 80 kids show up in the cafeteria at one time for the middle schools. Yeah, it was. So, I mean, they may have had different cafeterias for different age kids. And they used to have pretty good meals there. And then they had an alternative meal with not as healthy. Now flash forward to another school that was built in the 70s, the late 60s, early 70s, Archbishop Ryan High School for boys and girls. But then a second, it just looked like a big old, let's say it was built on the concept of schools going back to the 40s, I guess. There, it looks as if that looks like an institution. And it looks like they use the same architect that would build a state psychiatric facility, would build a high school for kids. I mean, I went to elementary school, and the elementary school was built probably in 1920s, 1930s. That was Catholic elementary schools, and the other public schools were built at the turn of the century. They're just ominous looking, but they were kind of quaint too. So, but the high school I went to, you got the long hallways, got the room and seats up to 40, you got the chalkboard in the front, desk, tables, and one side is the hallway and the other side is windows facing out. And that was it. All the way around the building, all the classrooms, 3 floors, 2,000 kids on each side, 4,000 kids all together. And then when the bell rang, running up to wherever your locker is. Yeah, lockers aren't. You don't see every kid doesn't have a locker anymore, and the lockers are half the size they were before. I guess because they have their own Chromebooks and things like that. You can keep a lot of your notes on that. I mean, you got your notebooks, your folder, and you got your books. I mean, you really don't need books anymore, do you? If you got a Chromebook, you can do the reading on there. Why didn't they just why they use paper still for that? I have no idea. What the fuck, But that's one thing they didn't get rid of. Now, we used to have, obviously, the computer lab in the high school I went to. 2,000 boys nonetheless. I think if they had 2 computers, there were 2, I guess, IBM clones, or they could have been Commodores or something like that, and the shit you did on it was pretty much like the shit they were doing on them in the 1960s. It wasn't exciting. It was hard to really get people excited because computer programming was an art or a deep science back then. Where you're going to say, I didn't see when it comes to computer games, in 1980, you had Pong. I think Pac-Man came out, maybe a little later, Pac-Man. But before that, it was Gunfighter, Pong, a couple other games that were coming. The graphics were pretty shitty, and people weren't really excited. There wasn't tons of jobs, but there were jobs. They knew that was going to be the way to the future. They didn't know everyone was going to have 1979, 1980. You didn't know it was going to be everyone was going to have a computer. It was only like 2-3 years later, 1983, where the incoming class of my college I was at, Drexel University, had every freshman had a Macintosh. And it was mainly a big word processor. That's all it was. And they were getting people comfortable with it. And it kind of makes sense because, you're going to go to work. A lot of them were engineers. They were going to be using them moving along. But the people that were studying then, the computers they were studying with and using then aren't the computers that they were going to use 20 years later, 25, 30 years later. All laptops and shit like that. Everyone has a laptop now. And you got your printers. You still have the printers. But I loved my school. I came from public school. And I'm not that... not the school that I was talking about, Old Mill. I had spent my last couple months in a public school in Philadelphia. And it was a Benjamin Rush Middle School. In a far northeastern part of the city, right on the border of the city and Bucks County. And that school looked like a prison. It had no windows. It was brick facade all the way around. And it looked like a detention center. Matter of fact, it looked pretty ominous. Just you had a bunch of concrete all around it. And behind it, it had the track. We had sports. I was on I ran track in the middle school, but it was at the bottom of a steep hill. And yeah, there was a dark school. I mean, it was a fluorescent lit, no light from the outside school. It was okay. I didn't do so hot in that. I don't know how I did so well in high school because that school wasn't so hot. But I didn't appreciate that school that much. Probably there wasn't a lot of appreciate. I went to school when I was 13 years old. At 13, no, it's 76, 77. So it was 14. My last, because I was a year behind. 78. Yeah, I was 14, and then boy, I didn't do well in math there, I guess. But I was 14 years old, and it seemed like I went to it was 8th grade. Most of the kids were 13, so I should have been a year older. But there were people 3 years older than me. There were guys that drove to school. It was only the 8th grade. It wasn't like a junior high thing. And yeah, they were. I guess they were angry guys because they couldn't be in high school. I don't know if they ever graduated high school. Who knows? They may have been happy where they were, but. What I was talking about is like I really appreciated the school I went to when I came out of Benjamin Rush School with no windows and stuff, and I went to Archbishop Ryan, a place that looked like maybe a psychiatric institution with some nice huge grounds that had really big grounds on it. Oh, they're back already. Oh, I'm going to be finishing up soon. There's my daughter. How was your second day of school?
It was good.
Yeah? Okay. It was huge grounds. And did you eat in the cafeteria?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had these huge grounds at the high school, and I didn't fully appreciate that until I saw the other schools people went to, the smaller schools they went to, and the different activities they had and what they had available. So when I hear people say, I wish I didn't like my high school, I don't like my grade school, I think, wow. There's places all around the world that they'd be fortunate in places like Kenya or South America. They got these one-room schoolhouses that kids are enthusiastic about attending to. And they still have outhouses, and they show up, and they got to walk miles to get to their school. And it's a privilege for them to be able to attend school. Here, not so much. You don't see that too much. But I think you really do have to appreciate what you have and where you are and what you got. It does help in the long run with your attitude. I'd like to thank you for listening. It's going to be a short one today. I have to get ready for work. Like I said, I'm looking for a good weekend. I'd like to thank you for listening. If you do like the show, please share it with your friends and family. I'd like to thank all you listeners, especially for your intrepid listeners in Saudi Arabia. You're probably expats listen to the show. Or if you're trying to learn English, I'll try to be more appropriate. I'll send out a little hello to you. I'll do that trill. That's kind of Saudi Arabian. Like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Keys Bartender. Thank you very much. Have a great day.